After unexpectedly inheriting $11 million from a distant aunt she barely remembered, Lily thought her life had finally turned a corner. But on the way home from signing the final documents, her car plunged off a cliff in what everyone assumed was a tragic accident. Except, it wasn't. Someone had tampered with her brakes. Declared dead after the wreckage was discovered charred and unrecognizable, Lily survived. Barely. Hidden away in a remote hospital under an alias due to severe injuries, she spent months recovering, with no access to the outside world. When she finally returned, ready to reclaim her life, she found it completely rewritten. Her husband had remarried. Fast. Her house was sold. Her identity erased. But nothing could have prepared her for the moment she showed up at their wedding anniversary party unannounced, and his new wife screamed at the sight of her, not in shock, but in recognition. Because she knew Lily, and she wasn't supposed to be alive. I never believed in luck. Not the good kind anyway. For most of my life, I scraped by, invisible in my own marriage, dismissed at work, and slowly fading in a home I used to love. That is, until the letter came. It was delivered on a Tuesday morning, the envelope thick and formal, like something from a law firm. Inside, a name I hadn't heard in 20 years, Aunt Margaret, and a number I couldn't comprehend. $11 million. She had no children, no close family. Somehow, I was next in line. The inheritance was real. My name was on every document. And for the first time in my life, I thought, maybe things were about to change. I didn't tell my husband right away. Mark had a way of turning my good news into shared property, his to spend and manipulate. I needed to think, to plan. So I drove out to the lawyer's office alone, signed the final papers, and tucked the check into my purse with trembling hands. Sun was setting when I started the drive home. I remember that vividly, the sky blood orange casting long shadows across the cliffs. I'd taken that road 100 times, winding above the sea, a view so beautiful it almost felt unreal. But that night something was different. The steering felt loose. Too loose. I slowed down. Just a little. Enough to notice the curve ahead and the way my car suddenly didn't respond when I turned the wheel. Then came the sound. A sharp, unnatural pop. And the brakes, gone. I remember screaming. I remember gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles burned. But the car didn't stop. It slid. Slammed through the guardrail. And then it was just air, silence, and water. They told me later the car burst into flames after hitting the rocks. That no body was found, just bone fragments, enough to declare a death. But I wasn't dead. I woke up 2 days later in a hospital hours away, pulled from the shoreline by a fisherman who thought I was already gone. I didn't have ID. My face was swollen, broken. I couldn't speak. They wrote me down as Jane Doe. I didn't fight it. Not at first. Somewhere in the fog, I realized someone had done this to me, cut the brakes, planned the crash, and I needed time to remember who I could trust and who wanted me buried. 3 months passed in recovery. My voice returned. My body healed in pieces. I watched the world from a flickering TV in a shared hospital room. That's when I saw it. Mark, smiling, standing beside a woman I didn't know, or thought I didn't, in front of the house. That used to be mine. The headline read, "Tech executive remarries months after tragedy." It hadn't even been 90 days. The woman's face was partially turned, but something about her felt familiar. The way she stood too close, her hand resting possessively on his chest. And then, that grin. A little too wide, a little too sure. I froze. A memory, quick, sharp, punched its way into my brain. Her name was Cassie. She'd come to the house once, maybe twice. A colleague, Mark had said. She'd left perfume on his collar and a wine glass in my sink, and now she was living in my house, wearing my ring, standing next to the man who looked far too relaxed for someone recently. Widowed. The crash wasn't random. It was orchestrated. I didn't know if Mark knew I was alive, but I was ready to find out. Not by calling, not by sending a letter. I was going to show up. I waited until the night of their anniversary party. I knew he'd make it public because that's who Mark was, always performing. I dressed in black, slipped in through the back, unnoticed. The music was loud, the laughter louder. I saw them through the kitchen window first, twirling, holding champagne. He kissed her forehead like it meant something, and then she turned, saw me standing there. Her glass shattered on the floor before I even stepped inside. She didn't. Looked shocked, she looked terrified. I hadn't planned what I'd say. I thought I'd have more time. I imagined I'd walk in, stay in the shadows, observe. Maybe confront them later, one by one. But when Cassie turned and saw me, truly saw me, her entire body snapped like a fault line under pressure. She didn't scream in horror, she screamed in recognition. That scream silenced the room. Music cut. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Mark turned, puzzled at first. His eyes scanned the crowd, narrowed at the broken glass, then followed the trajectory of Cassie's panic until they landed on me. For a second, just a second, he didn't react. His expression stayed neutral. Then it broke. He went pale. The champagne flute slipped from his hand, shattering beside hers. He took one slow step toward me and whispered, like it would undo everything, "Lily?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My face, the face he buried in the ground, the face he thought was gone forever, answered for me. People started, murmuring. A few guests laughed awkwardly, assuming it was some sick prank. But I didn't move. I stood in the center of the room like a ghost with unfinished business. Cassie backed away first. She nearly tripped over the hem of her dress. Her hand reached for Mark's arm, but he shrugged her off. He was still staring at me like I might vanish again if he blinked. "I don't understand," he said. "You died." I smiled. A thin, humorless curve of the lips. Apparently not. The silence was unbearable. The air turned electric, the way it does just before a storm hits. I could feel every eye on me, watching, judging, waiting for me to collapse or scream or demand the millions they probably thought I was here to claim. But I didn't want the money. I wanted the truth. Cassie finally found her voice. It was thinner than I remembered. Almost trembling. We buried you. There was a funeral. You saw a closed casket, I said. You saw a body burned beyond recognition and took the word of a coroner. That's convenient. Mark stepped forward, trying to collect himself. His voice turned colder, like he was switching gears. "Lily, if this is some kind of cruel game..." "Don't," I said, sharp now. "Don't pretend this is a surprise. The brakes were cut, Mark. That wasn't an accident. Someone wanted me gone." That got their attention. Several guests audibly gasped. Someone whispered, "Call the police." I didn't care. Let them hear everything. Mark glanced around, calculating. He was always quick on his feet, always rehearsing 3 responses ahead, but this time, he couldn't find his line. Because for the first time, I was the one holding the script. "I want answers," I said. "You don't get to bury me and move on like nothing happened." Cassie shook her head, muttering something under her breath. Then she ran, just turned and sprinted through the side door like the house was on fire. Mark didn't chase her. I followed, out into the night, through the garden that used to be mine. She stumbled into the driveway, heels clattering on the stones. When I caught up to her, she spun around and slapped me. Hard. "You weren't supposed to survive," she hissed. There it was. The truth, spilled in panic. Her eyes were wild now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I didn't mean to," she started, then stopped. "It wasn't supposed to be real. We just talked about it. He said it would be clean. Fast. I didn't think he'd actually..." She realized too late what she'd confessed. I looked back toward the house. Mark was standing at the door watching us, unreadable. "I need you to repeat that," I said quietly. "Nice and loud. Say it again." But she didn't. She lunged instead. For my purse, I think. Maybe she thought I was recording. I wasn't. I should have been. But even without proof, her face said everything. Her fear wasn't of guilt. It was of exposure, of me. Before I could react, headlights lit up the driveway. A car, black, tinted, pulled up fast and stopped inches from us. Cassie froze, then turned to me, voice shaking. "You don't understand. If you're alive, we're both dead." The back window rolled down, and the man inside wasn't Mark. The man in the back seat didn't get out. He didn't have to. His presence alone chilled the night air. He was older than Mark, with silver hair slicked back, skin like worn leather, and a jaw that looked like it had never softened for anyone. Cassie stood frozen like a child caught sneaking out, her hands balled into fists at her sides. "Get in," he said, voice flat. Not a request. An order. Cassie didn't move. Her breath was coming fast now, almost hyperventilating. I took a step back, instinctively guarding myself. Something about this man vibrated with quiet danger, the kind of authority you don't earn. You inherit. The kind that doesn't need to shout to make people afraid. He looked past Cassie and locked eyes with me. "You must be the miracle," he said. I didn't answer. I could barely breathe. Cassie turned to me then, pleading. "Please," she whispered, "you don't know who he is. If you do this, if you go public, it won't stop with Mark. He doesn't care about jail. He'll bury you for real this time. So tell me," I said. "Who is he?" The man smiled faintly. "I'm the man who made your husband." I blinked. "Excuse me? Mark wasn't supposed to marry you." That was the first mistake. He got sentimental, weak. The inheritance changed that. It made you inconvenient. "You tried to kill me over money?" "No," he said simply. "We tried to kill you because you were unpredictable." Cassie flinched. "She's not the threat. I told you, she doesn't have proof." The man didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on me, assessing, calculating. "You survived something you weren't meant to. That tells me two things," he said. "One, you're lucky. Two, you're dangerous." I took a step forward. "If you're so powerful, why are you here? Why not just make me disappear quietly, like last time?" He tilted his head, amused. "Because now you're a story, a headline. The wife who came back from the dead, that gives you value. So here's what I'm offering." He nodded to the driver. The man reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a folder, extending it toward me. Inside, a new identity, passport, bank account, deed to a house somewhere remote, a clean exit. "You vanish again," the man said. "For good this time, and you never contact Mark, never speak to the press. Never show your face, and if I don't," he shrugged. "Then we do it the old way, messy, final." Cassie looked at me with glassy eyes. I think in that moment she realized what she'd helped build. A machine too big to stop. I could see it in her face. Regret, but not innocence. She hadn't just watched. She'd participated. She'd stood beside my husband and helped plan my murder. I closed the folder without looking at it. "I already vanished once," I said. "It didn't work out." He stared at me for a long time, then gave a small nod. The window rolled up. The car backed out slowly, disappearing into the night like a shark slipping beneath the surface. Cassie turned to me, desperate now. "You don't understand. He won't just stop. You think Mark was the bad guy? Mark was a puppet. That man owns. Politicians, judges, you think you'll win in court? I don't need court," I said. "I need an audience." She blinked. "What?" The world loves a story. A wronged woman, a comeback, especially one with blood. She laughed, bitter and terrified. "You're insane." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm alive." And then I walked away. I didn't go back to the hospital. I didn't run. I went to the only person left who owed me something, Mia, my sister. We hadn't spoken in years, a falling out over something stupid. She was the kind of woman who always chose the easier road, who married a man who worked for the city and kept her garden in perfect rows. But she opened the door that night like no time had passed. "Lily," she whispered. "But you're—" "I know," I said. "I need help." She let me in. I told her everything. By morning, she had a plan. Mia had always been smarter than me, colder, but smart. She said if we wanted to bring them down, we had to start with the first betrayal. Not Mark, not the man in the car, someone who had access to the will, to the documents, someone who stood to benefit if I disappeared and the money reverted. Someone I never suspected. The lawyer. And Mia had just found out his office had been mysteriously closed for weeks, because he too had vanished. The lawyer's name was Bradley Voss. Mid-50s, sharp dresser, the kind of man who always wore cufflinks, and cologne that cost more than my monthly rent. He was the one who handed me the inheritance papers, who smiled as I signed them, who offered me a glass of champagne in his office that day, saying, "Your life's about to change." I trusted him. Now he was missing. Mia was already 3 steps ahead. She'd spent the night digging through property records, phone logs, even some shady forums she refused to explain. I watched her work from the couch, amazed and a little disturbed by how easily she navigated secrets. My sister had a life I never really understood, layers she never shared. He was laundering something, she said. The inheritance might have been real, but the way it was transferred? Sketchy. The money moved through 5 holding companies before it hit your name. Why? Because someone wanted it to be traceable, but only just enough. If you died, that money would have sat in legal limbo. And guess who would have been the executor of your estate? My stomach dropped. Bradley, she nodded. And if no heirs claimed it, the secondary beneficiary would have been a shell corporation linked to Cassie. That part broke me. Cassie. The woman who stood in my kitchen one afternoon, complimenting my homemade pasta while casually plotting my funeral. She'd made me feel small, like she pitied me. All while knowing she was already wearing my life under her skin. I stared at Mia. So it wasn't just Mark. No, she said. Mark was the bait, but Cassie, she was the hook, and Voss was the one reeling it all in. I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to think, trying to breathe. But why disappear now? Why not just take the money after I died? Because you didn't die, Mia said. You threw a wrench in the timeline, and that makes you a threat. A public, unpredictable threat. We needed a way to reach Voss without tipping off the others. If he was on the run, he was either scared or cashing out. Either way, he'd leave a trail. Mia had a friend at a financial monitoring firm, someone who owed her a favor. They tracked activity linked to shell companies like the one tied to my estate. That's how we found the cabin. It was upstate, tucked behind a stretch of dense forest, far enough from the city to disappear. Mia and I drove there without telling anyone. No cops, no warnings, just the truth in my chest and a metal flashlight in my hand. When we arrived, the driveway was overgrown. No lights, no sound, but the door was open. Mia stayed in the car. I stepped inside, heart pounding. The place was a mess. Papers scattered, dishes in the sink, a wall of monitors still blinking with static, and in the corner, a suitcase, half-packed, one shirt hanging over the edge. Someone had left in a hurry. Then I saw the blood, a smear on the floor, too deliberate to be an accident. And next to it, something even worse. My name, scrawled on a torn envelope, stained and crumpled, as if someone had held it with shaking hands. Lily, behind you. Mia's voice shattered the silence. I turned just as the figure lunged from the hallway. Thin, wiry, wild-eyed Bradley Voss. He tackled me to the ground, yelling nonsense. Fragments of sentences, paranoia spilling out of him. They're watching. They know I talked. They know. I fought him off, scrambling to my feet, the flashlight swinging wildly. Mia burst through the door with her phone out, recording everything. Stop! I shouted. Bradley, listen, I'm not here to hurt you. He froze, looked at me like I was a ghost, like I wasn't real. You survived, he said. I did. He staggered backward, sitting hard on the edge of a chair. His hands trembled. I didn't think they'd actually do it. I thought they'd scare you, push you to disappear. But when the car went over, I realized I wasn't part of the plan. I was disposable too. Who's they, Bradley? Mia asked. You mean Mark? He shook his head violently. No. Bigger. Mark's a joke. He was never the mastermind. It's the board. The silent partners. The ones Cassie answers. 2. My heart thudded. There's a board? Yes, he whispered. And one of them isn't just alive. She's someone you already know. Who? He hesitated. His eyes darted to the window. Who? Bradley? Before he could speak, the window shattered. A single shot rang out. Bradley Voss slumped forward, blood spilling across the table. And outside, a figure vanished into the trees. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember how Mia pulled me down. How we crawled behind the kitchen counter. How we stayed there for what felt like forever, holding our breath as the sound of footsteps faded into the forest. All I remember is Bradley's last words echoing in my head. One of them isn't just alive. She's someone you already know. He never got to finish the name. But in my gut, I already knew. By the time the police arrived, there was nothing left to find. No shooter, no shell casing, no vehicle. Bradley was declared dead on the scene. A paranoid lawyer found squatting in a stolen cabin, killed in what the cops called a probable burglary gone wrong. They didn't believe a word we said. And honestly, I couldn't blame them. We went back to Mia's house in silence. My hands still smelled like copper. My brain throbbed with the weight of unfinished sentences and dead ends. But Mia, she wouldn't stop. Someone tipped them off, she said. That wasn't random. That was execution. She was right. We'd been followed, tracked, watched. Which meant someone close to me was still feeding them information. We needed leverage, evidence, something undeniable. That's when Mia had the idea, Aunt Margaret's will. The original, unedited version. She believed there had been 2. The version I signed, and the one she actually wrote. But if the board had tampered with it, we needed to find the original to prove fraud, and there was only one place it could be Margaret's house. It had been locked up since her death. The estate was supposedly cleared and sold, but Mia found a document suggesting the property transfer had been halted due to missing paperwork. It was still in legal limbo, which meant it might still hold what we needed. We drove there at midnight. The house was exactly as I remembered it, quiet, grand, cold, like she was still inside somehow. We broke in through the back door, hearts pounding, flashlights low. We started in the study, ripped through drawers, file cabinets, floorboards. Nothing. Then in the fireplace we found it. A hidden panel, scorched along the edge, like someone had tried to burn it. Inside, a locked metal box. Mia picked the lock in under 5 minutes. I don't know where she learned that, and I didn't ask. Inside the box was a journal, my aunt's journal. The last entry was dated 2 days before she died. I've changed the will. I can't let them get it. Mark is lying to her, to Lily. Cassie visited again today. She thinks I don't know who she really is. But I remember her, from the trial, from years ago. Her real name isn't Cassie. I froze. Mia leaned in. Wait, what trial? I flipped the page. The name she used then was Isabel Corwin. She was my nurse. She disappeared after the verdict, and now she's in my house, pretending to be a friend of my niece. My vision blurred. Isabel Corwin, I whispered. That name sounds... And then I remembered, my mother's old friend. The one she stopped speaking to after the scandal. The woman who vanished after being investigated for elder abuse. My mother warned me about her once. She said, if you ever meet a woman named Isabel, stay far away. She takes what she wants, and she never leaves survivors. Cassie wasn't some young opportunist. She was a predator, a shapeshifter. A woman who'd reinvented herself time and time again, slipping through lives like a snake through tall grass. She didn't love Mark. She used him. We copied the journal, every page, every note, every word. Mia scanned it all, sent it to a reporter friend she trusted. Not a big outlet, a small one. The kind that still cared about truth more than clicks. And then we waited. The story went live 3 days later. Widow returns from the dead, exposes inheritance conspiracy. It exploded. Comment sections filled with outrage, disbelief, sympathy. People demanded answers. Cassie's photos were plastered everywhere, but by then, she was already gone. She disappeared the night the story broke. Mark, cornered, tried to claim innocence. But under pressure, he cracked. He confessed, not everything, but enough to face charges. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. He named names that led to arrests. The board collapsed under the weight of exposure, but not all of them were caught. Not Isabel. She vanished the way she always did, like smoke. It's been 4 months. I still look over my shoulder. I still sleep with the lights on, but I've started speaking out, telling my story exactly how it happened. People say I'm brave, that I came back from the dead, but that's not true. The woman who died that night, she was quiet, compliant. Afraid to confront the truth? The woman standing here now? She's a ghost, yes. But she's the kind that doesn't fade. And if Isabel is watching this, and I know she is, I hope she understands something. Next time, I'll be the one who disappears her. Because I didn't survive for revenge. I survived to end her legacy, one lie at a time.